Hello, you're very welcome back to the Matchbook Champions League podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined by a full gang once again of Mark O'Hare, Adrian Clarke, and Miguel Delaney. Slightly earlier recording time here to get it into your podcast feeds ahead of a massive week of Champions League action. And Mark, we might go straight into this, and I'll go to you first on Manchester City versus Leipzig. Once we take a look at the betting that we have on matchbook.com, you can back Manchester City in the match odds 90 minutes at 1.39. Leipzig are 9.2. The draws available 5.6. Both teams to score yes is available at 1.9. No is 1.99. The Asian handicap line sees Leipzig get 1.5 goal start, and the total is 2.5. Mark, you gave Leipzig a good shout out in the first leg. Are there question marks over City going to this game, or do you think they'll just have enough?
I think they'll probably have enough. I was positive and pro Leipzig coming into this tie. I thought they were underrated. Obviously, the first leg didn't really go exactly to plan or how I expected it to be. They were very timid in that first half and almost played like rabbits in the headlights and weren't able to be anything front foot based because they kept giving the ball away and turning it over whenever they did win the ball back off City. City probably had merit to say they could have been further ahead by half time, but not for the first time in Europe. They failed to make their domination count, and Leipzig showed in the second half, played with more ambition and confidence and grew into the game. And when the equaliser came, he felt it was always coming anyway because Andre Silva had hit the bar already. Wasn't your cliche game of two halves, but I definitely think Leipzig over the full 90 deserves something out of that match. But I don't think Pep would have been too perturbed by that result because City will be confident back at the Etihad. They're unbeaten in the Champions League at home since September 2018. They've won 21 of those 23 games since, and that includes a 6-3 sort of shellacking they handed out to Jesse Marsch's Leipzig in 2021. I don't think we'll see anything on a scale like that again, but I think that Leipzig can sort of strike a blow here. No Nkunku, which is a big loss. He scored a hat-trick in that 6-3 defeat. But he's been injured for a while. Maybe came back, but he's back out injured again. There's no Diallo, no Galashi, no Schlager as well, which is key players across the spine of Leipzig's team, actually. But Dani Olmo did get some minutes off the bench at the weekend, which is a bit of a boost. But I think, previously I would have thought Nkunku's absence would be fatal for Leipzig. Maybe not so much under Marco Rose because they've had 17 different goal scorers in the Bundesliga. They definitely do share the load around, and one player, Emil Forsberg, has really come to the fore in recent weeks. Creating and scoring himself. And ultimately, this is a team who scored 63 goals in 27 games across all competitions under Rosa. That's 2.3 goals per game on average. They've scored 13 and 6 in the Champions League under his tutorship. I thought they were the better team in 2 games against Real Madrid in the group stage 2. So they definitely do have ability. But ultimately, going to Manchester City and the Etihad is a step up. They're Champions League favourites for a reason. I did look at the 1.9 on both teams to score. Leipzig rarely keep a clean sheet. They did on Saturday, but their goalkeeper had to make a penalty save against Gladbach, and they came to life in the second half and scored 3 goals. Renault Cushy winners. As I say, this is a much different test, and I think probably similar to what they experienced, or obviously a step up, I should say, rather than what they did against Dortmund about 10 days ago, where they were very, very, very good for most part of that match, but still end up losing it because they give away sloppy errors, possibly weren't clinical enough when it mattered. And City will create chances here. You expect them to take a couple, but I do think Leipzig can strike a blow at least. Just because I was interested in both teams to score at 1.9, it makes sense to then make the leap to Manchester City to win and both teams to score, because it's a big leap from 1.9 to 3.05, bigger than 2 to 1 on this eventuality. City could easily come hose Leipzig quite comfortably, and you could get a consolation goal here, or as I probably anticipate, it might be a little bit more competitive, but ultimately City come through because they've got a fully fit squad coming into this match. They're still not reaching the levels we probably anticipate or expect from them, but they're getting results and getting the job done. So I expect them to progress.
Yeah, Miguel, you're on the same bet here. Is there any sort of danger this could get into a nervous sort of Champions League night for Pep Guardiola's side? Because Mark alluded to the home record, which is phenomenal, 21 out of 23 of their last 23 Champions League home games.
Actually, it's one of those where I wasn't as I probably took a little bit of convincing myself to put it down. I mean, I do think City will go through, but not one of those where I'm saying it with any great confidence. I think this could really go either way. In fact, it could be 1-1 maybe, and potentially go into extra time. It's for that reason I've gone for BTTS. But I suppose just when you weigh everything up, including that home record, including you would still think the gap between the sides, Manchester City should have just enough. But this is one where there's potential for a slip-up. But I mean, I heard that some people around City even were talking about kind of the worry that it could become a Monaco around the first leg, especially given how the scale of City's superiority in the first half and the way that kind of early in the game and the way that kind of frittered away. And at the very least, there's potential for Leipzig here. I'm just going for City, but again, I don't say that with any great confidence. I mean, if people wanted to play it safe, for maybe BTTS is the way to go. But just because of the price and just because when you weigh absolutely everything up, they probably will do enough. But I don't say that with huge conviction this time.
Yeah, sounds like it's going to be an interesting night for Manchester City. Speaking of 1-1s that Miguel alluded to there, Adrian, a comment came in here. I was going to brush over the weekend, but I do have to give you a shout out here. Billy on YouTube says, proper unlucky not to land the 1-1 in Newcastle versus Wolves. Adrian, I thought you were in as well. And all the stats, the commentary I was listening to, all the stats came in about the 1-1s. And after it went 1-1, I go, sure, I knew all this before the game because Adrian had backed it. So very unlucky there.
You can't win them all. But yeah, we were on the right lines, weren't we? It was the 1-1 derby, that is for sure. But yeah, look, we're all on the same page here for sure. Yeah, my selection, before I'd seen what the other guys had picked was City and both teams to score. That Leipzig are almost always worth a goal, aren't they? They're a good attack-minded side. They've scored in 9 of their last 10 away fixtures in all competitions. I think they're better players. Obviously, we like Gvardiol at the back. I think a lot of their better players are in forward areas. And somebody like Werner, I know that we've sort of taken the mickey out of him a little bit in recent times when he was in the Premier League, but he is a threat on the counter, and Leipzig will hold that threat over City for the entirety of the game. They did win at Celtic, they won at Shakhtar, Leipzig, and as Mark said, they played pretty well in defeat at Real Madrid. So for me, they're a decent away team that can definitely ask questions of the City defence. I think they can score. I know that City's defence has looked more solid of late, but yeah, I still think they can score in the game. But yeah, ultimately, you've got to land on City with that unbelievable record at home in the Champions League, at home in any competition, really. 14 goals they've scored in their last 4 Champions League matches at the Etihad Stadium. So, yeah, I think they'll squeak it, but because Leipzig aren't especially solid at the back. But this isn't the fluid City, is it? So that's why I'm keeping, I would only imagine it to be a 2-1 or maybe 3 at a stretch. But yeah, City and both teams to score for me.
Yeah, that's currently available at 3.05 on the Matchbook Betting Exchange. Do check out those markets, those combined markets, either match results, total goals, or both teams to score that hour or two before kickoff. If you are listening on the podcast, well worth checking out the Matchbook price. Will invariably be best price on the odds checker grid. We'll move on to the second game. We've locked that in. Good agreement on the first game. Relative agreement here on the second. It's Porto versus Inter. The other game on Tuesday night, we're going in race card order. We'll take a look at the betting that we currently have on matchbook.com. You can back Porto at 2.74, Inter 2.8. The draw is available at 3.55. Both teams to score, yes, is in there around 1.8 and knows the underdog in that market at 2.1. The Asian handicap line is a draw no bet market, so plus 0.0. Porto 1.96. The same bet on Inter is 2.02, and the total is 2.5. So, Adrian, on this one, look, you correctly called Inter correct score 1-0 last week. What did you make of the game? Because there were chances at both ends, so it was competitive enough.
I thought it was very even. Yeah, it could have gone either way. Obviously, there was a red card in the second half for Otavio, which sort of just tipped the balance in Inter's favour. They got the breakthrough. I think 4 minutes from time. Could easily have been a drawn game. I think that Porto will take heart from it. Inter don't seem to be playing as well as they were a few weeks ago, maybe a couple of months ago. I remember they wiped the floor with AC Milan in the derby. You cast your mind back to that, and you'd be more confident in Inter. At the moment, I'm not so sure. I don't think they've been in tremendous form. Yeah, it was a tight affair, and I would imagine it'd be relatively tight again. But Porto's record at home isn't bad, I know they got smashed. You probably won't. People will remember them getting smashed by Club Brugge, which seems a long, long time ago, given what's happened to Brugge since then. But then they did beat Leverkusen at home 2-0. They beat Atletico at home 2-1. And obviously, domestically, they're very, very strong. I was looking at their home record across all competitions. They've scored at least once in in their last 13 at their own stadium. And given some of the chances they created away, I think they can score. They can score in this one as well. And Inter don't look full of goals at the moment. I think their strength maybe is at the back. 5 clean sheets in their last 8 games into Milan. So the other thing that sort of works against Inter when I'm looking to make a call on this game is their record away from home against decent teams in Serie A. Now I know it's not Serie A. I know it's the Champions League. But look, the top half teams or the top 12 teams in Serie A, you can put them in a similar ballpark to Porto. They've leaked a lot of goals away to the top 12, 19 in 8 games. That's, it's over 2 a game that they're leaking on the road in Serie A to the better sides. So for me, Porto will score in the game. So I'm going to land on Porto draw no bet here, plus 0-0, because I think if Porto do score 1 or potentially 2, they don't get beaten over the course of 90 minutes. I don't see Inter doing a Brugge and scoring multiple goals. So, yeah, I'm quite confident about this one. I think Porto can at least get a draw, which isn't good enough, clearly. But potentially they can get themselves a narrow victory as well when we get weighed in.
Yeah, some people in the chat saying this game could go all the way to penalties, in which case that bet will come in potentially. Mark, and you're in full agreement on this in this side, which is the draw no bet Porto.
Yeah, very much so. It was almost my best bet of the midweek card. I do like Porto a lot. Fancy them to be very competitive. I had a pro Porto bet in the first leg, so Ottavio suspended, but no reason to desert them now. There's a bit of history around Porto playing Italian clubs at this stage. They've knocked out both Roma and Juventus in the last 5 seasons, and there's a feeling around the club that this is their moment. This is their season. They played on Friday night, beat Estoril 3-2, bit of a scratchy win. Probably more convincing than the final score suggested, but as a rotated team, Galeno and Taremi came off the bench to score and confirm things. But there was only 30,000 in the crowd, and a lot of the feeling around Porto was, well, this match is kind of meaningless. The title race has already gone. We're saving ourselves for Tuesday night, getting into the Dragao earlier, creating a hell of an atmosphere and a cauldron for Inter to come and try and play. And bar that sort of freak result against Club Brugge, Porto have been super competitive in the Champions League at home at the Dragao against almost everyone, bar Liverpool. Liverpool, for some reason, have the Indian sign over them and seem to smash them every time. But apart from that, they're very, very good. You look at Inter, there's a very strong suggestion coming from Milan that this is make or break now for Simone Inzaghi. They lost the title to Milan, which didn't go down very well. Then Friday night's loss against Spezia has left them 18 points behind Napoli and kind of raising suspicions now that Inzaghi's not good enough to lead the Nerazzurri. So they're playing this match, and then they've got the Derby d'Italia to come at the weekend before the international break. So massive, massive week for Inter. And look, the top 4 isn't a lock domestically, and it really should be. They have been unconvincing. Skriniar's a fitness doubt, which is a real sort of cause of concern. There's question marks over who partners Lautaro Martinez. And as Adrian says, domestically, their away record at the best teams is very, very poor. And actually defensively away from home, across the Champions League and Serie A, they've been desperately poor, conceding 1.8 goals per game on average, just 2 clean sheets against Victoria Pilsen and Sampdoria, who are rock bottom of Serie A. It's not a good look. I guess the positive was they were very, very good at Barcelona in the group phase when playing on the counter-attack, and they might get more of an opportunity to do that here, defending their lead. But I just think the prices, like they were in the first leg, are slightly disrespectful on Porto, and I think they're much more competitive, and the market is giving them an opportunity here. So, yeah, happy to go in on Porto plus 0, almost even money, which just feels too big.
Yeah, Miguel, over to you on this one. Look, you're on. I guess you're on similar lines with the guys, but you're going for both teams to score angle. You reckon that this is screaming goals for you this game, second leg? Oh, sorry, come in again there, Miguel. Sorry. Go on, come in again there. Sorry, muted you there.
Sorry. Yeah, maybe not screaming goals, but it's one of those situations where I think just the nature of a second leg will play into. I mean, I would almost go for a kind of classic 1-1 or a 2-1 that kind of goes into extra time. I think this is genuinely, for all the reasons the lads have said, especially with the kind of cauldron Porto will make it, probably the tie that's closest to 50-50 out of everything left. But for that reason, I think with the nature of European football now without the away goal, it's less likely actually that these games kind of get into they're not as cagey as they were. And I can well see a situation where Porto even get ahead, but Inter claim one as well. I think BTS probably just feels to me almost the safest to go in a game where it is hard. I'm not while I see what the lads have said in Porto, I'm not quite as confident in them. And I must say, Inter have been quite defiant throughout this season. Granted, Skriniar is a worry, but having knocked out Barcelona, also I think there's a bit of momentum with Italian football at the moment. So just to cover ourselves, I'm going BTTS.
Yeah, seems like a decent play there on both teams to score. With the majority, I will lean to the guys with the drawn about Porto, but it's a fascinating second leg. Probably the closest that Miguel touched on there. On that was Tuesday night's Champions League football. We'll move on to Wednesday, and talking to producer Ryan, who's a Liverpool fan, and before you guys came on air, if they have any chance, we'll take a look at the betting first and then get the guys' comments. Real Madrid 2.38, Liverpool 2.96. The draw is 4.1. Both teams to score, yes. 1.5 is probably as short as we've seen, really. World Cups, Premier Leagues, taking everything into account. The Asian handicap line sees Liverpool get quarter of a goal head start at 1.9, and the total is available currently at 3.5. So Miguel, set this tie up for us. I guess the only difference between every other Champions League comeback that Liverpool have had and this one is it's in the Bernabeu, not Anfield, which has to be worth the goal.
It's really given everything we saw last season in particular, how that made this Real Madrid European champions. It's really the worst place you can go for a comeback. It was the home comeback last year. And yet there's still... Well, I mean, it's because it ebbs and flows. Given that, had Liverpool been playing this straight after the 7-0 against Manchester United, it'd suddenly be belief be coursing through them. As it is, and the momentum of that is pegged back by the 1-0 defeat to Bournemouth. And I know Mark would usually say not to go on the last result, but I suppose in this case it's almost relevant just because when it comes to a comeback like this, it is about that emotional momentum carrying through, particularly in terms of and as Liverpool know better than anyone, bar Real Madrid, how these things work. It's usually about getting that one goal as a staging point, then it changes the nature of the tie, and it's about going to the next one. So it's going to be interesting to see how Liverpool go into it after the last week. My gut is that Liverpool win, maybe go close in another very open game, but Real Madrid win the tie. We'll get into this in the correct score later. I'm willing to go there. But Liverpool have no option but to absolutely tear into Madrid. And I do think while Madrid managed that quite well in the first leg, there is a slight issue as regards the intensity of the two teams. Now, Liverpool couldn't sustain it, which is a problem. Madrid knew how to play it. But it could mean that Liverpool really go at them and test them in that opening 10. And I think that could set the pattern for the game where it is, again, another back and forth. And again, I mean, I'm seeing some of the other bets there, actually. Go against what I'm about to say. But it's one of those that nearly be safe as well, going over 2.5, over 3.5. I think this is just going to open out and be another, I suppose, a similar kind of parallel, maybe if different teams, obviously in a different quality team. Liverpool-Roma in the 2018 semi-final, and the way Roma started to push Liverpool, and that created a chaotic game. And I think this could well be similar.
Yeah, we're going to lock. So your bet, Liverpool both teams to score 4.4. Miguel, for what it's worth, I'd be angling towards what you're saying here in terms of a Liverpool win. And Mark, I'm a sucker for the narratives at times in football betting, and a Liverpool win seems quite big to me on the match odds. But why have you ultimately gone against just not having a bet here in general?
I'm just finding Liverpool completely impossible to second guess. They're so erratic at the minute. In the space of 10 days, we've seen them fall to their worst ever home European defeat and then hand out Man United's joint worst defeat in history. Just you can't really script that kind of stuff. So, and both matches were really weird as well. Like the United match, United were the better team for the first 40 minutes, and then sort of self-destruction in the second half, lends itself to Liverpool running riot. But then you look at the first leg of this match, there were 7 goals, but only 18 shots in the whole game. Madrid scored from 5 of their 9 shots. They scored from 5 of their 6 shots on target. The expected goals count was actually in Liverpool's favour, but everyone with their eyes could see that they totally lost control of the game. Both goalkeepers who you put down as probably being the best in the world at shot stopping made absolute clangers. But yeah, it was just the complete lack of control which Liverpool lost in the second half, which was quite alarming, really. And Real Madrid, just never looked flustered either, did they? When they went 2 goals down, they just kind of carried on business as usual, continued the same sort of plan approach, and experience and confidence told in the end. So, in terms of the second leg, no side has ever retrieved a 3-goal deficit from a home first leg. of a Champions League knockout tie. But what I thought was quite interesting is some of this Madrid squad will have been involved when, as defending champions, they won 2-1 away at Ajax in the last 16 in 2018-19 and were thrashed 4-1 at the Bernabeu in quite a shocking second leg, wasn't it? I mean, it wasn't obviously, Ajax weren't trying to overcome such a big hurdle, but even still. So I wouldn't write Liverpool off just yet. I think we've seen enough in the last decade of Champions League football to see anything can happen in football at the top level, PSG, Barcelona, etc., Liverpool themselves. So I'm not going to write them off, but at the same point, I can't trust them and I can't be willing to back them at those prices because they are slightly shorter than they probably would be based on what we saw in the first leg and based on the hurdle that they've got to kind of try and overcome. I guess positives, they've got their sort of galaxy of stars and forward areas available. The first choice back four is back, fit and available too. Saturday was a bit of a blot, but apart from that, they have been trending slightly upwards. But in the end, the reason I've left it is these games are so dictated by the first goal and when that first goal comes and who scores it. If Madrid score early, I think both teams will probably assume the tie is over, psychologically at least. And then if Liverpool score early, it's absolutely game on. But at the same point, if we get no goal in the opening 30 minutes, it could easily go the way in which Adrian's thinking. So, just happy to sort of leave it alone. I think there's better bets on the card elsewhere.
Yeah, we'll hand over to you, Adrian. And when you're leaning on that unders angle. And I guess a lot of the stuff that Mark talked about there, game state, that first goal goes to Real Madrid, all of a sudden the tie's done. Definitely,
that comes into my thinking. Look, having watched, if anyone watched that first leg or saw the score, they would think, it's going to be crazy again. But I just think they're a pretty streetwise side, Real Madrid. Carlo Ancelotti is a very, very experienced manager. And I'm a little bit like Mark, by the way. I don't think I personally will be dabbling on a bet in this game because it's so unpredictable, or it feels that way. But my hunch is that it will go under in terms of goals because Real Madrid will shut the game down. I think they'll be very good at making it stop-start, at breaking up the rhythm, of just trying to kill any hopes that Liverpool have. And look, for Liverpool, if they concede one goal, they're out. It's done. So are they really going to go hell for leather in the first half? Are they going to go gung-ho first 15 minutes? I don't know. I don't think I would if I was Jurgen Klopp. It might be more of a one where you have to attack and be positive, but absolutely not concede in that first half. You've got to keep in the tie, haven't you, to have any chance of progressing. So I don't think Liverpool are going to leave themselves as open as maybe we all think they will, in which case I think it'll be a tighter, scrappier game than we hope for as neutrals, because we all want it to be a classic. We want Liverpool maybe to tear into them and create a little bit of history. But I just think it might turn out to be a damp squib. And as Mark says, if Real Madrid do score first, and let's be honest, in Vinicius and Benzema and players they got at the top end of the pitch, that is not unlikely, then it's done. And I think Liverpool will accept defeat and that will be it. And it'll be quite a tepid remainder of the game. So yeah, I was looking at under 3 goals at even money, which feels quite good. But then I've just heard that you can get 1.79 on under 3.25 goals, which means if there are 3 goals in the match, we still get a profit. So that would appeal to me, I have to say. You need 4 goals in the game to miss out. That would be my selection here. But it is a very, very tricky game to call.
It is indeed, and one we won't be putting up a bet here on the podcast. But Miguel, I'll give Miguel's chance to respond in the correct score market when he explains why this will be an entertaining game in that regard. We'll move on to the final game. Napoli at home to Frankfurt. Take a look at the betting and then go to Adrian on this one. Napoli 1.55, 90-minute market. It's very short for teams so far ahead, I guess. Frankfurt 7.0. The draw is 4.6. Both teams to score yes is 1.9. No is available at 1.92. The Asian handicap line sees Frankfurt get a 1-goal start at 2.08, and the total is 2.5. So yeah, Adrian, set this game up for us. It's always a tough one to decide how a second leg is going to go when there is a bit of a cushion. So how do you see Frankfurt approaching this one?
Well, I think they have to go for it again, a little bit like Liverpool. They can't go too gung-ho because one goal for Napoli effectively puts them out. But they're going to be on the front foot, I would imagine, looking to score goals as early as they can in the match. yeah, it's there for them. Really, most people think they're out. Probably their own fans think we're going out. So it's an opportunity for them to maybe play a little bit freer, a little bit looser than they ordinarily would do. And they're both teams to score. Kings really in the Bundesliga. I was looking at their away form domestically. 10 of their 12 matches in Bundesliga have seen both teams to score land for Eintracht Frankfurt. In all of their games, 67% of matches have seen both teams score. Look at their Champions League. They won 2-1 over in Portugal against Sporting. They lost 3-2 at Spurs, but always carried a bit of a threat. And they won 1-0 in Marseille. So away from home, they've been pretty tidy. And obviously we know what they've done in the Europa League in recent history as well, turning in some very, very impressive away performances. Now, Napoli are in that awkward position, the most dangerous lead or whatever that nonsense is that people say 2-0 is. You think, what is their state of mind going into it? Do they just play their normal game and just forget about what the score is? Or do they, just try and control it without overexerting themselves? So it's an awkward situation. You've got to say that Napoli are very likely to score. Frankfurt don't have the tightest defence, as those stats I've just reeled off would highlight. And Napoli are just sensational, aren't they? They've scored at least 2 goals in 11 of their last 12 matches. So based on that, you would think that they've got a very, very good chance of breaching this Frankfurt defence and probably winning the game. So yeah, for me, both teams to score is where I'm going, because I don't think Napoli have a watertight defence. They are sensational going forward, and Frankfurt, as I've just outlined, are often worth a goal on their travels, and they've got to go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in the era of Andy Gray telling me 2-0 is the most dangerous lead in football. So when I heard the stat, probably a couple of years after that I think something like 2% of teams end up coming back to win from 2-0 down, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, despite the fact I'd watched hundreds of games, and obviously since then that myth has been dispelled.
Let's just blame that on Kesey. Probably Kesey told him that duff stat. I don't like Kesey doing.
He's so convincing, because he'd wait for the consolation goal 2-1 and then Andy Gray would tell you how it's the most dangerous lead, and you just buy into that concept, But forgetting that, of course, most teams will get the third goal then and then see off the game. But anyway, off that tangent, Miguel, Napoli, 18 points clear in Serie A. It's just incredible. And seeing their goals go viral on Twitter, not just because of the quality of the goals, I feel there's also a love for this Napoli team on their own.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And this was given the history. Their only 2 titles came under Maradona, given Maradona's passing 2.5 years ago, and how symbolic that would be in this. And of course, as much as anything, how they play football. And also, I suppose, in European football now, given the strength of the English game, given how much of it is dominated by big money, and Napoli, while a relatively big club, even in that context, they're not comparable to the superpowers. So much building into this. I thought actually this weekend was all the more interesting, given that Lazio's, like, watching Lazio this season, it's almost felt like they play every single game as if with almost this knowledge, or sorry, this feeling that if they don't win this game, everything's going to fall apart. Every game is pushed to the limit, which might have been slightly dangerous had they not been so far ahead. And then, I was even wondering, that's still kind of from the outside that even presides in terms of how they lost against Lazio last week. Thinking, well, how are they going to respond to this? But of course, they responded as they have done this season to their only 2 defeats prior to that, which was a victory. And with the league, okay, I don't think they'd say wrapped up. They're not going to think about it like it's wrapped up. But with such a comfortable lead, it does give them maybe suddenly a little bit of an allowance in Europe. And I would almost feel in this game, they're going to go into it straight on. A BTTS, I think, is actually a good bet for it. But for me, I suppose what feels obvious is Napoli and another, maybe not a shed load of goals, but 2-0, 3-0, 3-1. I suppose I'm allowing myself the capacity in terms of that Napoli could just cut loose against Frankfurt and make it another 3-4-0 as well. But yeah, I think they'll win the game. And I suppose after that, it's about the number of goals you want and whether you think Frankfurt will score.
Yeah, Napoli over 1.5 goals, 1.77 does seem quite a solid enough bet. Mark, we get you on the podcast for different angles, and this is what I would call a different angle. And how about to go this game? Is this based on game state and the 2-0 lead, etc.? This sort of bet, or explain your sort of thought process here.
Sure. Firstly, I think it's worth bearing in mind, just re-emphasising some of the stuff that the guys have already said. Napoli 18 points clear in Serie A, which is just madness. We're in March with so much of the season still to play. 2-0 first leg lead. Their opponents here, Frankfurt, are missing their star striker, Moani, through suspension. They happen to be playing at the Maradona Stadium, which is their fortress, and there's going to be virtually no away fans because the Naples government have effectively banned them. There's quite a lot of crowd trouble at the first leg, and been trying to find ways to sort of ban away supporters in any way they can. So that's the latest. Anyone with a sort of a Frankfurt address won't be allowed to attend this match, but we'll have to wait and see. So almost everything is sort of in their favour in this regard. They've never reached the quarterfinals of the Champions League, so there's a huge carrot there for them to go out and confirm their place in the last 8. I think Spalletti's been working wonders to keep the team's feet on the ground. He's done brilliantly in terms of his team selection. He's spoken quite interestingly at the weekend about his lack of rotation this season. There's very few injury doubts across the squad, so most of the best 11 will be fit and available, and I expect them to go for Frankfurt here. And if you look at the first leg, Frankfurt did start with real intent in Germany, but Napoli grew into that game, and Trapp had to make a first half penalty save. But it was kind of only just sort of saving Frankfurt a little bit longer before Napoli did take the lead before half-time, and just showed their superiority from there onwards. And, Frankfurt, I don't think will come here and have their tummies tickled, but, Moani's a big miss. Jesper Lindstrom, another forward, first-choice forward, is unavailable. So you got Kamada and Goetze, who've been playing well, but Rafael Borre has to come in here, who was quite influential last year in their Europa League winning run, but I think he scored 3 goals across all competitions this season and has definitely been a sort of second-string player. It's a big ask for him to come and lead the line now. But yeah, again, a sort of 2-goal margin win from the first leg. I don't tend to get involved too often, but I just think at home with no Moani, I too was looking at Napoli to win an over 1.5 goals at 177, but I just thought that 2.22 is a reasonable jump for Napoli to lead at half-time and win the game at full-time, which seems fair considering the circumstances. They tend to start matches very strongly. If you look at their group stage wins against Liverpool, Rangers and Ajax in Naples, they're all at least 2 goals ahead by half-time. They have got a tricky trip to Torino at the weekend, and which I think will probably be on their mind. So from their perspective, score early, get the tie finished as early as they possibly can, kill off any life from Frankfurt, and then they can start to rest and rotate in the second half potentially. And I think they'll just be keen to sort of kill the Frankfurt spirit early doors, and then obviously get an opportunity to rest themselves second half perhaps. So I'm just kind of banking on them sort of starting strongly, getting the early lead, and thereafter they can kind of chill out a little bit.
Okay, yeah, 3 angles you can attack that game. Both teams will score yes for Adrian 1.9. Miguel probably the safest option, Napoli in over 1.5 goals and 1.77, and Mark with that half-time, full-time 2.22. I'll leave it up to the viewers to decide there, but insights.matchbook.com, a full recap of all the bets put up today, as well as the long shots and best bets, and that'll be available on Monday afternoon. And you can find all other stuff there, including our Cheltenham content, Matchbook Insights, the place to be this week for football and horse racing. So, long shot time, Miguel, your chance to reply to Game State here. And look, again, maybe before I listened to Mark and Adrian a bit, I did feel that Liverpool were overpriced in this market. But if they do score the first goal, it could be chaos in this game.
That's exactly it. I think that's what. I actually expect them to score the first goal. Even if you want to go by the pattern of the first leg, I think just by the nature of the tie, they have to come out fast. And I think that will set a pattern for the game. I think Madrid are like as good as they are, even throughout last season. They're capable of being shocked in any European tie. Like that was the story last season. Basically, it was them responding to comebacks in everything except the final. Although Liverpool did actually start the final quite well too, and required a big early save from Courtois. Again, the dynamics have changed since then. But I think it's obvious that Liverpool will go for it quite quickly. I think that will bring a goal, and that will shape the tie. And I'm going to go for. I was actually tempted by Madrid 2, Liverpool 4, but I thought that's probably gone a bit far. I'm going to go for Madrid 2, Liverpool 3, which is 26.
That's a good price, isn't it?
Big price. And look, it is one of those games. Look, before the game, you'd be surprised at some of those prices on the correct scores 2-3, 2-4. If you are expecting a big game, expecting Liverpool to come out on top, and even in play on the match with betting exchange, if Liverpool do go 1-0 up, the markets won't respond to that as much as you think. So there could still be juice in some of those correct scores. Speaking of correct scores, Adrian, Manchester City 2, Leipzig 1. You kind of alluded to it earlier. You do like this one around 9.8 currently.
Yeah, just following up on my selection, which was Man City to win and both teams to score. Yeah, I can see it. I don't think I don't think Manchester City are at their free-flowing best. I think we can all see that. They laboured, didn't they, a little bit against Crystal Palace the other night. They relied on a sort of daft challenge from Elise to get the penalty. Lots of domination, but the finishing wasn't great, and they didn't create that many unbelievable opportunities. Leipzig are a decent team. They carry a threat up top, no doubt about that, particularly on the counter-attack. They're often worth a goal. Home or away, RB Leipzig, and I think they can score at the Etihad, but is their defence good enough to hold City at bay for the 90? I don't think so. So yeah, I looked at this price. I thought 2-1, a sort of a competitive match. 2-1 was where I was thinking, and I was quite surprised that 9.8 was the price. I think that's decent value.
Okay, yeah, 9.8 currently. Manchester City 2, Leipzig 1 again. An hour or two before kickoff, that could be pushed out a little bit further as well. Mark, you're kind of combining a couple of correct scores here in Porto versus Inter.
Yes, Porto to win and under 2.5 goals, which is 6.2, effectively back in the 1-0 and 2-0 home wins. Back in the atmosphere, really, of the Dragão to carry Porto through to the quarterfinals, or at least force extra time. They're a team I've got a huge amount of admiration and respect for under Sergio Conceição. Clearly, on paper, in terms of kind of playing personnel and budgets, there's a bit of a gulf between the two teams, but Porto are a gnarly bunch. They're very well organised, highly motivated, full of self-belief, which I think can be a bit of a cocktail, really, in these kind of knockout ties. And it's a few elements which I think Inter have lost in the past few weeks or months, really, especially away from San Siro. They weren't particularly convincing in the first leg. I thought they were quite fortunate, really, to get that win. And this feels like an incredibly important juncture now for Simone Inzaghi, a hugely important week. And I'm not backing Inter to come through this tie. So, quite keen on Porto.
Okay, yeah, 1-0 or 2-0 available at 6.2 Porto and under 2.5 goals. And Mark, we'll stick with you for best bets. And you made the point on Napoli halftime, full time, but just summarize in about 30 seconds or so. 2.22, you feel this is overpriced and the best bet on the card?
Yeah, look, it's not an easy week for the Champions League football, I don't think, in terms of picking out the best bet. So
that's been the theme for the round of 16, hasn't it?
yeah. I won't get my excuses in early, but I do think Napoli at home to win, leading at half-time and full-time at 2.22 is worthy of a shot here. A Frankfurt side without the bulk of their fans, their support, without their top goal scorer, considering this bet won in the reverse and could have won by a more convincing manner as well. And look, while the opposition has been mixed as well, Napoli led 2-0, 2-0 and 3-0 in their home group games in this competition so far. They're 18 points clear domestically. They can afford to put all their eggs into this basket now this midweek. They've never been to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. I think they'll be very keen to stamp their authority over this tie early doors and try and see the game out with another victory at home.
Okay, 2.22 currently, half-time, full-time, Napoli. Adrian, over to you for this one. Porto, drawn up versus Inter. You feel this one is the best?
Yeah, it makes me feel a little bit better that Mark referenced this as a possible best bet on his card as well. So yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm aligned in his thinking on Inter. I'm just not completely sold on them. They've lost domestically at Bologna, at Spezia recently. They've conceded a lot of away goals against the very best teams in Serie A, against the top 12. They're averaging over 2 goals against per game. And Porto have a very strong record. They've scored in their last 13 home games in all competitions. They've taken a few scalps down the years at the Stadio Dragão, and I think they can do it again. So yeah, Porto draw no bet at just under evens just feels a bit weighty, and I'm more than happy to go in on it.
Okay, final best bet, Miguel. You're sticking to your guns. Real Madrid versus Liverpool, taking on the guys over 3.5 goals. You're expecting absolute fireworks if Liverpool do get that first goal.
But it doesn't even have to be fireworks. I think it can just go. It can feed into, and sometimes this even happens with these sort of games that are kind of a bit killed, where there's the last half hour, and because they're almost dead as ties, that can actually create kind of almost this meaningless thread of goals. It's something we've seen before in the past. I think that covers, or my bet covers this. But also the opposite, which I actually do feel is more likely, where Liverpool at least create the threat of something big happening. And also 3.5 is, I think, quite moderate for a tie that was 5-2 in the first leg. So I'm going for Madrid-Liverpool over 3.5, which I think covers a fair few potential outcomes. But also maybe feeds into. I do think this will open up. I don't actually have that much confidence in either defense either, and Alaba is out as well.
Yeah, it is interesting. Even if it does Titus turn meaningless, it doesn't necessarily mean there won't be goals, Miguel. Yeah, so that's over 3.5 goals, 2.3. One final comment on YouTube before we go. Billy wants to know who's Mark tipping for his best bet at Cheltenham. I was speaking to the guys off air about this. There's no great horse racing love on this podcast, unfortunately, but you will have a day 1-2 preview in your podcast feed for Thursday afternoon. We're going live at 1 p.m. on YouTube with Tom Stanley and all the gang. Mark, did you want us to come in there with a best bet for Billy, or just any advice for punting on Cheltenham this week?
Listen to the Matchbook podcast, obviously.
Come on. There's a man well
That's
on
the
brand.
correct answer.
The correct answer. Brilliant stuff, Mark. Thanks, Adrian, Miguel, as always. There won't be any Premier League one this week, given the FA Cup weekend, given Cheltenham. We will be back the usual time, Monday, 1 p.m. with the Champions League crew, all going well. Until then, enjoy the football, enjoy the race, and we'll chat to you on Monday. Bye-bye.